Schools are making plans now to send students online if a strike by education workers does in fact go ahead on Monday.
CUPE issued a 5-day strike notice yesterday as the union and province are still in disagreement over staffing levels. The two sides appear to have come to terms on a 3.59% wage increase, which was a major sticking point that caused the previous walkout less than 2 weeks ago. That strike only lasted for 2 days after the Ford government promised to repeal Bill 28, which was legislation that would have forced a contract on them and barred them from striking.
Joining us now live to talk more about this is Fred Hahn, the president of CUPE Ontario. Fred, good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us here. What we understand, what we can kind of sort of read through, both sides of this, is it appears there is at least some sort of agreement on wages, maybe about 15.2%, over 4 years here. That seemed to be enough on the one hand, but on the other hand, CUPE is still fighting for more. What exactly is CUPE now fighting for? Sort of reconnect with Fred, make sure we got that audio check going, and once we get Fred back, we will then go back to that conversation with Fred Hahn, of course, the president of CUPE. So that will become it momentarily. Let us get that fixed. In the meantime, let's talk about inflation. One supply chain expert thinks grocery prices may be calming down now. This, of course, after the latest inflation numbers were released.
While the price of must-haves like food, gas, and housing have been on the rise, overall strict belt-tightening measures might have been having the desired effect. Canada's inflation rate held steady at 6.9% last month after several months of decline, but there is some hope. While gas prices and interest rates were higher last month, the rise in grocery prices and natural gas slowed, offsetting those extra costs.
So let's get a closer look at the impact of the food budget with these inflationary numbers and the overall trends. Arda Zakarian live this morning for us with more on this. Arda, every time you go to the grocery store, it feels like you've got to dig a little deeper in your wallet.
Yes, and see what is cheaper, what can I replace with what? Possibly if you want to have any other kind of lettuce other than romaine, that might be a good idea. I just popped into Loblaws to check the updated price. It's $8 for a 3-pack of romaine, which is outstanding. So that's something to think about. Now, other food items, dairy products, so we're talking butter and even eggs. These all saw an increase over last month, from September to October, according to Statistics Canada. And the product with the highest month-over-month increase was actually margarine. But there are other things that saw a decrease in prices, like coffee, tea, fruits, most vegetables, also fish and meat. Here is a little bit about how some people are dealing with the price increase.
I try and search for the cheaper products now.
Maybe I'm cutting back a little bit on especially the fresh produce here. It's pretty expensive.
They're so pricey, we just say, okay, pass, wait till it comes down. We can make something else, or we use something from the frozen food section that's cheaper.
So why is this happening? Well, surprise, supply chain issues. There's also labor shortages. The price of gas was also increased. But there are experts who say that things are going to calm down. We did see a decrease at the pumps of about 8 cents over the past 2 days, so that's certainly helpful. And also grocers are getting a more handle on things. So hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel. Back to you.
Yeah, a lot of people crossing their fingers about that. Thank you, Arda Zakarian, live this morning. Parents are also crossing their fingers about what could be coming school-wise next week. We're now 4 days potentially away from a strike by 55,000 CUPE workers across Ontario. So to get more about that, we reconnect now with Fred Hahn. Our audio issues have been fixed. Fred, it's good that you're here. I want to talk about this. We understand that maybe there's a sort of raise on the table, about 15.2% over 4 years for those CUPE education workers, significantly higher than what the province was initially offering. But CUPE wants more. Can you explain what more CUPE is looking for?
Thank you, and sorry about the audio stuff. From the beginning, this bargaining has been about the chronically low wages of those workers, but it has also been about the services in schools. And what we're trying to do is reestablish funding that was in our last round of bargaining that actually secures work in schools, secures jobs in schools. We're talking here about education assistants who work with kids with special needs, early childhood educators who work in our full-day kindergarten program, custodial maintenance workers who make sure our schools are clean and safe, admin staff who make sure that those schools are running well. what we need is a reinvestment. The government cut almost $1 billion from school funding. We need money to be put back into schools in order for those jobs to be there so students have the supports they need to succeed.
And Fred, can you get into the details about how much funding is needed to, reestablish some of these services that you deem essential?
Well, I'll tell you, our folks have been bargaining back and forth, but just yesterday, the minister on Twitter was quoted as saying he's committed to 1,800 new staff in a year. This was news to us, I will say, and it's important to note there are 4,800 schools in Ontario. 1,800 new staff is like less than half. It's 0.5 people per school. We have early childhood educators who aren't in kindergarten classes. That means that one adult is working with over 20, sometimes 25 children. We have kids with special needs where their parents are sitting in their cars in the parking lot to make sure that they can be available to help their child, because while their child's been designated as requiring one-on-one support, there simply aren't enough education assistants to provide that support. Massive school buildings where there used to be 3 and 4 people to clean them down to 1 person at a time when we've got a cold and flu season raging and we need good cleaning and infection control. It simply makes no sense. There's been a downward trend here in terms of these important supports, and what we're trying to do in this round of bargaining is secure those supports for students and for our schools.
Fred, I totally hear what you're saying about the fight, and the cleanliness and all those issues you just raised. I'm just curious as to how students will benefit by being out of class. Why strike? Why not continue the bargaining?
It's difficult to bargain with yourself. The government basically said, this is it. This is all we got. I will acknowledge there's been movement. They had to move because of the outpouring of support that was there, because of their massive overreach with Bill 28, with invoking the notwithstanding clause. All of that crisis that happened just a few weeks ago was unnecessary, just like what's happening now is unnecessary. There are resources available. The Financial Accountability Officer says there's a budget surplus. There are ways in which the government could make these investments that actually help schools, that actually help our kids. And that's really now the focus of bargaining for our folks.
Okay, Fred Hahn, president of CUPE Ontario, appreciate your time this morning and shedding more light on the issue.
Thank you, Fred.